The gas leak at San Juanico was only the trigger because the tanks that survived the fire are what detonated and killed 600 people. Days ago, 50,000 residents of Garden Grove, California ran from their homes for the exact same reason. A single storage tank there began to overheat, and the whole county braced for it to burst. Firefighters kept using one phrase for the nightmare they were racing to prevent: a boiling liquid explosion. It's the same physics that erased a neighborhood outside Mexico City on November 19, 1984. That morning, a fuel terminal holding a third of the capital's cooking gas tore itself apart. Somewhere between 500 and 600 people died, and another 5,000 to 7,000 were left with severe burns. The leaking gas was never the real weapon, and that's the part almost nobody explains. The fire only set the stage, and the steel tanks themselves became the bombs. To see how, you need to know what's actually sitting inside one of those tanks. The fuel is liquefied petroleum gas, the same stuff that feeds a backyard grill. Picture that propane bottle, but scaled up to the size of a small house. At normal temperature, it badly wants to be a gas, not a liquid. To store and ship it, engineers squeeze it into a liquid under heavy pressure. Inside a sealed tank, it sits as a cold liquid with vapor pushing down on top. Left alone, it stays calm, like a quiet pond trapped under a tight lid. Now wrap that same tank in an open, roaring fire. The steel heats up fast, and the liquid inside climbs far past its normal boiling point. It desperately wants to boil, but the sealed pressure of the tank holds it down. So the liquid turns superheated, hotter than boiling, yet trapped as a liquid by force. You picture a gas leak as a small fire you can simply walk away from, but a boiling liquid explosion isn't a fire you outrun, it arrives everywhere at once. Shake a warm soda can, pop the tab, and you've seen a tiny version of it. The fizz is dissolved gas tearing out of the liquid the instant the pressure drops. A fuel tank does the same thing, except the scale is an entire city block. Watch what happens when the hot steel finally weakens and the tank wall splits. In that instant, the pressure vanishes and the superheated liquid flashes straight into vapor. This is the flash boil, and it finishes in about 1/1000th of a second. 1 liter of that liquid erupts into roughly 270 liters of gas as it escapes. That violent expansion is the blast itself, a wall of vapor slamming outward faster than sound. Because the cloud is fuel, it instantly finds the fire and ignites into a giant fireball. Stand a quarter mile away, and that pulse of heat can still set your clothes alight. This is why such a blast kills people who never came near the flames. In 1979, an engineer named Reid published the math behind this in the journal Science. He showed the liquid has to cross a superheat limit before a tank can fail this way. Once it crosses that line, the event isn't a leak anymore, it's a detonation. Reid had taken a horror that looked random and reduced it to a single temperature. The blast also does something most people never picture. It throws the tank itself. A long cylindrical tank tends to split end to end and launch like a rocket. Steel fragments weighing 30 tons can fly more than 1,200 meters, around 3,900 feet. Each flying tank turns into a missile aimed at the next vessel in the yard. That's how one explosion becomes a chain domino detonation that does the real killing. Now go back to that fuel terminal outside Mexico City in the dark before dawn. It held 48 large cylinders and several big spheres, all packed tightly together. In the control room, an operator watched the pressure on a pipeline suddenly drop. Just before 5:40 in the morning, an 8-inch pipe ruptured between 2 tanks. He stared at the needle as it fell, with no way to choke off the flood. Gas poured out for minutes and pooled into a cloud the size of 2 soccer fields. The heavy vapor crept low across the ground, hunting for a spark.
A right dawn breeze was all it took to walk that cloud into the flames. It drifted into a flare stack, a small open flame the plant kept burning on purpose. The vapor caught, and the first explosion rolled back through the entire tank farm. About 90 seconds later, The first tank reached its breaking point and let go. Then a second tank ruptured, and a third one followed it into the sky. Over the next hour and a half, the yard erupted in a string of these blasts. Each fireball swelled to around 300 meters across and burned for roughly 20 seconds. Witnesses 20 kilometers away felt the ground shake like a small earthquake. The closest homes sat barely 430 feet from the tanks, well within the kill zone. Families were asleep in those houses when the sky above them turned to fire. As many as 200,000 people fled the area in the desperate hours that followed. Rescue crews barely got close as the blasts continued for hours, and the tanks the first blast left standing kept heating, then kept bursting. This is the cruel signature of the chain. Every survivor vessel becomes the next bomb. By the time the sun rose, the terminal and much of the town were gone. Photos from the next day show a flat field of scorched steel and ruined homes. So what turned one ruptured pipe into one of the deadliest industrial disasters ever recorded? The true answer is the plant's layout, far more than the leak itself. The tanks sat far too close together with no real fire break between them, so the moment one vessel became a missile, the next one was always within range. The plant had no gas detection system to catch the escaping cloud early. By the time anyone grasped the danger, the vapor had reached the flame, and the firewater pipes were shattered by that very first explosion. Once that supply was gone, nothing kept the steel below its breaking limit. Spraying them is the whole game because cool metal stays under the superheat line. This wasn't bad luck. It was a layout that almost guaranteed a chain reaction.
Every one of those failures was known and fixable long before that morning. That's the hardest truth of San Juanico. None of the physics was a mystery. Modern codes now force these tanks far apart, often by a full football field. They sit behind firewalls with gas sensors and water deluge systems watching around the clock. Every one of those rules is written in the ash of places like this. Which brings us right back to Garden Grove this week. That overheating tank in California had the exact same trap waiting inside it. But this time, the tank cracked and vented slowly instead of bursting all at once. The pressure bled off, the fireball never came, and 50,000 people went home safe. The line between a scare and a massacre is whether a tank fails slow or fast. That's the entire science of a boiling liquid explosion hiding inside one cracked weld. If a fuel tank turning into a bomb shook you, picture a single cargo vessel doing it. It's the fertilizer ship that gutted Texas, and that video is waiting right here.